Hey guys, it's me Deshaun. We're back with another video. And as per usual, another day, another drama. So gather around the campfire and let me tell you a story about Nickmercs. Nickmercs is a Twitch streamer and MLG gamer for FaZe. So famous, in fact, him and his best friend Tim the Tapman got themselves added into Call of Duty as operator skins. It's kind of like how Ninja got himself added in the Fortnite. See, everything sounds so good. You got yourself a skin of yourself in one of your favorite games, if not your favorite game. Pretty dope. Insomniac, please put me in Ratchet and Clank. But anyway, so far so good. But recently there's been a lot of controversy with the LGBTQ community. Man, God. And as you may or may not know, since it's June, it is also Pride Month. And with it being Pride Month, you can expect a lot of people a part of that community going out and letting it be known. And it seems as though they do not care about who gets caught up in their protests either, because they actually protested at a school board meeting. Now, me personally, I don't like the fact that children are getting exposed to sexual content. It's almost as if their sexualities are getting forced down their throats rather than them naturally discovering that on their own. And, you know, if that option's there, they'll take it because they wanted to do that. Everyone knows that's an option. They have their own month. But when you do put this content, this option, and shove it in the face in front of an impressionable child, to me, that just doesn't sound like a good idea. Shoving anything in the face of an impressionable child could obviously change them. It's literally a running gag that if your child sits in front of TV, their brain's gonna get rotted. I hate to be that guy, but look at what it does to the black community, my community. All this rap and violence gets shoved down their face, down their throats, and guess what? Everyone wants to be a thug. Everybody wants to be a rapper, play in the NBA and the NFL. I'm gonna be a drug dealer when I grow up. Consuming information at such a young age is dangerous. And it doesn't matter what they're consuming. It's the same thing with this LGBTQ thing. But the main issue here is that this is sexual content at the end of the day. It's a very weird discussion and argument to have with a child, you know, a child that doesn't even know what they want to be when they grow up. And you're sitting here acting like, oh, what gender are you? Are you bisexual, pansexual? You know, like, I think it's better if you know that you're different, you go out there and find out on your own. And with the LGBTQ community, you'll always know that you're not alone. But when you sit here and try and shove this stuff in the face of impressionable children, I just can't help but feel as if that's dangerous. Especially because this is like birds and the bees talk. But I guess this case it would be the bees and the bees. Even though, you know, aren't all bees technically cousins? But I digress. I understand why you wouldn't want your child around that, but I also kind of understand where the LGBTQ community is coming from. Like, oh,
when I was a teenager, I was going through things and I kind of knew I was different from the others. So I want more people to help realize that it's okay that they're different. And but
you know what I'm saying? All that shit like that. But at the end of the day, I do feel like, regardless of whether or not you believe that kids should have this on them or not, at the end of the day, they shouldn't, because these are talks that their parents should ultimately have with them. Or this is ultimately something they need to figure out on their own. There are plenty of people in the LGBTQ community that did find out on their own, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. But when you try to give this life-changing choice, this red pill or blue pill ass option to people who don't even know how to tie their shoes or know what they want to be when they grow up, that's not a very wise decision to constantly flaunt in front of them, have them stress and worry about things that they ultimately should not stress about until that option ultimately faces them when it comes to the journey that they take in their life. You can't shove this journey in a child's face when they don't know what that journey is. It's like when a child's parents split up and they got this fucking stepdad that constantly pesters them. Why don't you come live with me? Why don't you come live with me? Why don't you come live with me? They finally live with that guy, and it turns out the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But when it comes to something like your sexuality, there's no walking back from that. But the main issue here is children should not be worried about their sexuality. There are other things kids should be worrying about. like how to tie their shoes, how to play a sport, how to have fun, what action figure or video game that they want. And people should think whether or not this is fair to them. Let the child enjoy their childhood. There's so many LGBTQ people that like video games and stuff like that. Y'all know why? Because they had the chance to enjoy their childhood. Give these kids the chance to do that so they're not sitting here stressing over their sexuality, especially when they're not mature enough or responsible enough to do these things in the first place. Now that you know that, it's obvious that I'm on the same side as Nick here, but I'm not going to sit here and be biased because low-key, when you look at the context of the reply, you see these LGBTQ guys getting beat up and stuff by anti-protesters, and he's like, oh, well, the real issue is, what about them trying to put these things on the kids? It does kind of look a little funny, but if you were to run the mile and just jump the gun, assume, and then label Nick and be all like, oh, well, you're anti-LGBTQ because of what you said here, I can't get too mad at the assumption because, you know, it could look like that from the perspective of others. It kind of just seems like a form of miscommunication and misinterpretation over the internet because they just took this one tweet and ran the mile with it. It's that simple Twitter thing where you're like, oh, I like pancakes. And then someone's like, oh, then you must hate waffles. That's just the trend on Twitter for some reason. Unfortunately, Nickmercs' skin from COD is now out the game, and I don't think it'll ever come back. And because of this, Tim the Tat Man is a friend of Nickmercs. He actually told Activision to take his skin out as well because he stands by him. And with this whole entire outrage going on, this Nickmercs drama, there are a lot of people boycotting COD at the moment. Now, is this going to do much at the end of the day? Probably not. Because it seems as though they're obviously going to be the general audience of Call of Duty who's not that deep into COD, you know, enough to care about MLG things, FaZe, or even the influencers that are involved with the community. People who just buy Call of Duty to get off of their 9-to-5 job and shoot people. Hop on the multiplayer, play it with their friends, they all come home after work, drink some beers, shoot the shit, stuff like that. Even Dr. Disrespect installed COD after this whole entire situation. Honestly, I wish Activision would get their hand slapped for this, because it seems as though they only did this, at least in my opinion, I feel like they only did this to Nickmercs because they wanted to see if they could get some brownie points from the LGBTQ community. Like, oh, we cut off our arm. We cut off a little, no, not even an arm. We clipped a toenail off for you guys at the LGBTQ after we seen Nickmercs' response. Like, I don't even know if people even requested for this to happen. I think they just jumped the gun and took it upon themselves to remove Nickmercs from the game. And I just can't help but feel as if this is just Activision being as scummy as always. You want my honest take? I don't even feel like Activision even cares that much. I really just feel like they just did that for the LGBTQ dollar. Because all of this just happened so fast. I'm really glad that people are boycotting this. It's kind of disappointing how this is not going to get any, like, nothing's going to happen or come out of them boycotting the game. But I do feel like it's a step in the right direction for the community and the influencers, a part of it protecting the COD culture. Whether you like it or you hate it, it's good to see people stand together, united, against a common evil, common enemy. Well, with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Y'all take it easy, and with that, I'm out.